Monday Night Football edition. I am your host, Todd Furman, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and co-host, the one, the only Payne Insider. And as always, the Bet the Board podcast is powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, and encourage you to go to FanDuelSportsbook.com/BetTheBoard. Make sure you take advantage of all the generous sign-up bonuses for new users available at FanDuel. FanDuel, $1,000 free bets, enhanced odds, so many different ways for you to get into the game. You'd be foolish not to add FanDuel to your stable of sportsbooks. Payne, right off the top, I have to ask, Sunday Night Football live up to your expectations, or were you a little bit disappointed in the way things played out in the Tom Brady homecoming?
I was disappointed because I wanted a clean game. We said it in our Sunday Night Football preview when we discussed the possibility of rain coming in, and unfortunately, that possibility became reality. So, you have two teams that aren't just playing each other, they're kind of playing the elements and jostling that situation around. But everything we said pretty much came to fruition, right? This game was going to be on Mac Jones, and it was. If you look at all the handoffs New England have, they registered a 15 expected yards on those runs. It was the second lowest by any team since 2018. So the ground game was non-existent. I thought Mac Jones played really well. We talked about that short pass game coming into effect against a cover 3 and having some success with that. And what more could Mac Jones do? 31 for 40, 53% passing success rate, finished with a completion percentage nearly 5% better than expectation despite a shoddy receiver group in the rain. Now, most of that damage was late, and you saw the Bucs lose another cornerback. Carlton Davis went down, looked like he pulled his quad. So you were already down Bunting and Dean. Richard Sherman looked like he was old, and it looked like it was his first game. He was targeted 9 times, gave up 9 receptions for 102 yards. But I thought New England was lucky to be in that game early. Because if you look at the drive patterns, only one of their first 7 drives went more than 19 yards. And over that same span, Tampa had 4 drives into the green zone. 3 of the 4 entered the red zone. You heard Tom talk after in the end-of-game interview with Michelle Tafoya. We didn't do well in the red area tonight. And that's ultimately what kept the Patriots in that game, along with some of the weather elements.
You mentioned the weather elements playing a role, and I thought what was fascinating, because all of those years in New England, we knew that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady would typically play their best and most focused football when there were other ancillary factors they had to concern themselves with. And in that interview with Michelle Tafoya, Tom mentioned, we're not used to playing in the rain, which I found pretty fascinating, that they were kind of out of their element. And just obviously the way you have to construct a team that's going to win games and try and have the playoff road go through New England versus playing down there in Tampa, where you don't worry about the elements typically playing a role, especially in your home games.
What is interesting, though, is it rains a shit ton in Florida. It rains. It felt like he just kind of was it was a weird moment for him, right? You could tell he was starting to get a little bit emotional, and he was giving the PC answers. And I think if this was a game that was played in, 28 degrees and cold rain, it might be a different element. But those guys play in rain. Obviously, they do practice indoors. You have an indoor practice facility there because of the rain. So maybe that's what he was referencing there. I obviously believe that we can't discuss this game without talking about the endgame situation.
Oh, I want to get your take on that, because yeah, I have strong opinions, but no. I always defer to you as the guy who knows the charts, knows the probabilities and the outcomes. So I'm curious to get you to walk not only me through this, but all of our listeners as well.
Well, it's really interesting because, math is supposed to deliver more facts and kind of remove the feelings. And so, wherever you go on the internet, you'll see some of the sharpest guys even disagreeing with this. Like Seth Walder came out and was like, I had it 5% in favor of kicking the field goal. Then you had Ben Baldwin saying like the win probability would have increased by like 2.6 points had they gone for it. And so that discrepancy gives the non-analytics community like, see, if all the smart guys can't even agree, how are the coaches going to implement this stuff? And so I hate when I see that, but next gen, which I, kind of believe them a little bit more, They came out and basically said that the expected win probability for New England when they decided to kick the field goal dropped to 24%. Had they gone for it, they would have been at a 35% win probability. So that decision from Bill Belichick was a downgrade in win probability by about 11%. But what's interesting is even when you factor in some of the other elements, right? Like strip some of the math from it and just think about the actual game itself. 4th and 3, you're going to execute a short pass, something you had been dominant with on the last 3 drives against Tampa. They were down 3 corners at that point. Their top corner is Richard Sherman, who was just signed earlier that week. And even if you're able to snap, hold, and kick a ball in torrential downpour, you still would have given the ball back to Tom Brady down 1 point with 56 seconds and 2 timeouts in his back pocket. So I prefer leaning on the aggressive side there. I would have went for it, especially when you factor in how successful you'd been moving it through the air in the short pass game and the Bucs being down 3 guys in the secondary.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest takeaway. I mean, if that's a field goal they're attempting, 15, 20 seconds to go, okay, the dynamics change quite a bit. You're putting the outcome entirely on the leg of your kicker, whereas in that spot, knowing Tom Brady was going to have a chance with the ball back, even if you make the kick, albeit into the weather and all that, but a timeout at his disposal, it would have made for a true Hollywood-type finish for the outcome if Tom marches him down for the game-winning field goal. So I'm kind of with you there in terms of the decision-making and thinking that he should have had a little bit more confidence in Mac Jones, who had performed above expectations throughout the course of the game. But I can tell you there were Oh, go ahead.
That would have been all the drama, too, right? That would have been the official, this isn't Tampa versus New England. This is Brady versus Belichick. This is Tom Brady, final drive, going up against Bill Belichick's defense. And that would have provided the drama that I think everyone was hoping for.
Yeah, and I think Bill came up with a good game plan. I mean, he tried to do everything he could in his arsenal to confuse Tom Brady. There were plenty of near misses. How rarely you see Antonio Brown drop not 1, but 2 balls with a chance to take the lead in crunch time there. I mean, I'm not sure if he lost that first ball in the light that was perfectly thrown, and you could see the confusion on Tom Brady's face, and then Brown diving for a ball that he had in his possession. Just a very surprising way it played out, not necessarily the final score, knowing that every book from here to Timbuktu found themselves rooting for the New England Patriots to get home as a 6.5-point dog. I imagine outright would have been a better outcome in the wake of Green Bay and Kansas City, the other 2 biggest public sides of the day, barreling through their numbers to try and take care of the betting public. But other than Sunday Night Football, clearly plenty of takeaways that we saw throughout the course of the day, Payne. What were some of the good things that you saw unfold so far in Week 4?
I would have been hesitant talking about this had we not won the game, because it then comes off like sour milk. And so let's start with Washington. Let's start with Taylor Heinicke. I thought he looked pretty good in that game. Certainly the first few drives, you're getting used to Dean Peace's defense. You have Logan Thomas go down on the first possession of the game, which I didn't love seeing. But after that, Taylor Heinicke looked pretty good. Pushed the ball downfield, average intended air yards 9.3, but he was also accurate. Completion percentage 5% better than expectation. Washington was nearly a full yard better per play than Atlanta in that game. Washington's success rate on first and second down was 10% better than Atlanta's, and I think that was the annoying part when you watch this game. It's like, Jack Del Rio, what are you doing? Get off the field on 3rd and a mile. 3rd down's what kept Atlanta in the game.
3rd and 8, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 13, 3rd and 7.
Didn't matter.
It may as well have been 3rd and a half a yard every damn time.
Yes, and the refs did some things, right, where we're like, geez, come on. But Atlanta dominated 3rd down, 69% success rate. You saw Jack Del Rio keep singling Calvin Ridley. The 3rd and 13 from the 14, it's like, play a shell defense, Jack. Instead, it's a one-on-one jump ball where Cordarrelle Patterson's got this massive height and physicality advantage over your corner. On 3rd and 13, that's to your advantage. Make Atlanta earn it. They want to throw a 50-50 jump ball on 3rd and 13. You give someone a 50-50 chance on 3rd and 13, all of a sudden things swing in their favor. But it was a huge win for Washington on a week where the players dedicated the game to Ron Rivera being, 1 year cancer-free. Washington overcame some huge swing calls, both in the second half. You had the strip fumble in the green zone where the refs took away basically what they said was the runner's progress had stopped, but clear recovery from Washington, and they returned the ball quite far. So that came back, and Atlanta goes and scores a touchdown on that drive. And then the massive swing play where Chase Young sacks Matt Ryan on 4th and 2. So instead of it being Washington's ball 1st and 10 from the Atlanta 46, it's Atlanta's ball 1st and 10 on the Washington 27. That call was one of the largest of the weekend in terms of swing win probability. And it's one thing if you're a great team at home as a large favorite, you can overcome that. It's another thing if you're a below average team on the road in a pick'em game and overcoming that. But fortunately, Washington did for us and our listeners.
Speaking of our listeners, I'm sure they want to ask the same question, but I'll do that for them. Do you have any plans to send Dustin Hopkins a fruit basket? Will it arrive this week, or will you wait at least to be closer to the holidays?
That was the other obvious annoying part to this game. I think you lose 3 points in special teams at a pick'em game. And Scott Turner, while I thought he was very good today, was not very good in the goal-to-goal situation where he was handing the ball off to J.D. McKissick. Was not very good on the 2-point conversion attempt from the 3.5. I'm a huge proponent of play action, but going under center and going play action from the 3.5 yard line as if you're going to run the ball there was a bit mind-boggling. You basically eliminate Taylor Heinicke's legs from the equation. You eliminate him being able to see the defense, right? His back's got to be to the defense at some point. So I didn't love that, but I thought Scott Turner was pretty good throughout that game. And I'll be candid. I love our listeners. Love them to death. But I was hoping that J.D. McKissick did not get in the end zone there. I did not want the ball going back to Atlanta. And had he been out at the 1, you'll see a situation where Washington kneels the ball once, Atlanta calls their timeout, Washington kneels the ball again, and then they call timeout with 3 seconds, and Dustin Hopkins would have kicked a game winner. Washington would have won by 1, and everyone that got Washington +1, pick 'em, or listened and took the money line would have won as well. Had you listened on Sunday and said, hey, I'm going to lay the 2.5, even though they said money line, you would have been screwed. And I feel bad about that, but I would have much preferred winning by 1 and not giving the ball back to Atlanta and sweating a Hail Mary there at the end.
You know, just even more reason why all of our listeners know to subscribe to the Bet the Board podcast. The RSS feed will update in real time. They have a chance to listen as soon as the podcast drops on Thursday. Getting the best of the number in the NFL. Listen on Wednesday, get the best of the number. And they never have to sweat it because they would have had a cheap money line at minus $1.15, minus $1.20. Would have walked out of that contest feeling like $1 million. But alas, Washington holds on, wins the game 34-30, and we had to work a lot harder to get there than we otherwise should have. Payne, I want to stay in the same division, and I think there's 2 different ways we can go. I mean, I can praise the Dallas Cowboys or I can praise the New York Football Giants, but I'll start with Dallas. And to the Cowboys' credit offensively, Kellen Moore continues to create offensive game plans based on opponent. And I don't think in this day and age that should be understated, because coming into the year, so many people, well, the Cowboys can only win one way. It's Dak Prescott throwing for 300 some odd yards to mask some of their defensive deficiencies. Yet again, Dak Prescott doesn't have to do anything out of the ordinary, throws for less than 200 yards, but Ezekiel Elliott for the 4th straight game continues to see his rushing yardage number go up. From 33 yards week 1 against the Bucs to 71 week 2, 95 and 143 yards in the win against Carolina. He now has 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. So his demise, or at least people that thought he's not going to get touches, clearly was a knee-jerk reaction. But they're doing it in a variety of ways. It's Amari Cooper 1 week. It's Ezekiel Elliott another. And CeeDee Lamb. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys have shown versatility on the offensive side that I think will pay dividends as they get deeper into the season.
So with Dallas, I was impressed, and we've gotten good Kellen Moore to start the seasons in the last few years, and then there's been this drop-off. So I hope things kind of continue on this path with Kellen Moore, but you hit it perfectly. Really in a game where Dak wasn't great. Completion percentage more than 6% below expectation and horrific play on 3rd down. Kellen Moore turned to the ground game. And, Jerry Jones is loving life, seeing that, right? The offensive line and, his 2-headed monster at tailback. Like, to see those truly contribute for a win, Jerry Jones is loving that. Dallas averaged 7 yards a carry on first and second down. And that ground game allowed Dallas to bypass third down pretty frequently. Dallas was a net positive 2.8 yards per play on early downs, and that's ultimately what won it for him. The Giants game, a little frustrating for me because the line was off. We made it 6.5. Should have taken 8.5 early in the week. That's a bet every single time. But I wanted to wait. Wanted to see what the status of Shepard and Slayton was. Ultimately, when they were announced out, we shifted our focus to the first half under. But the reason I didn't play the side is I knew the game was going to be a grinder, Todd. And in my head, you kind of play these games out. And I said, this thing's going to be 14-10 late. And somehow Sean Payton's going to manufacture this touchdown drive, and it's going to end 21-10. And so when I saw 21-10 scroll across my television mid-fourth quarter, I'm like, shit. That's some big brain stuff right there. And then 15 minutes later, I see the Barkley receiving touchdown highlight come across about 9 times. And the first words out of my mouth, it was only 2 of them. And the first one started with F and the second one ended with me. And so I was not happy seeing that. But fortunately for the Giants fans, this is a big win. And it was a big win for us, too, because everyone knows we have the Saints win total under 9.5. But Daniel Jones, that might have been the best game he's had as a pro.
Danny, he's out there slinging it, man. He is out there slinging it with no weapons.
That's the biggest thing. We saw there was a John Ross sighting, lost his shoe, but there was a John Ross sighting on the explosive touchdown in the first half. And that's what makes this more impressive is, the offensive line isn't great. And you're down 2 of your top 3 weapons. It was great to see Daniel Jones and Golladay finally get on the same page. And that's something that had been frustrating Golladay a little bit, but we knew it could take some time because he had missed most of training camp with a nagging injury. And so him and Danny Dimes could not get on the same page. And it looked like finally against a very good secondary and defense that'll be something to look forward to in the future. Now, completion percentage, 10.5% above expectation for Daniel Jones. He was killer when the offensive line kept him clean, 24 of 30 completion from the clean pocket. And then the Clapper, I thought, did a decent job. You get Saquon Barkley out in the pass game, which I think is where he's actually most effective. Threw with play action on 35% of dropbacks, and Daniel Jones averaged 13.7 yards per pass attempt and a 144 passer rating with play action. So this was just a fantastic game for Daniel Jones, and it was really good seeing Saquon integrated into the offense. I think people know my thoughts on him as an actual running back. Solid, just refuses to hit the goddamn hole. And so he's not as effective as he could be, but he is lightning catching the ball out of the backfield, and it was good to see him make a couple hard cuts yesterday, so he's starting to get the confidence back in his knee as well.
You know what's crazy about the Giants? And somewhere along the way, it stops being a trend, and it almost has to be accepted as gospel. The Giants are a team that you want no part of when they play in their own building, but because they're so piss poor playing in MetLife Stadium, they're always undervalued on the road, and it's not coincidence this team continues to have inflated price tags when they go out on the highway. And I didn't see an outright win coming against the Saints, but the fact that they took professional money and, like you said, were able to come bursting through that backdoor winning outright in overtime spoke volumes, and Joe Judge gets them off the schneid. Speaking of New York, I think a hat tip to the New York Jets as well. I have to give their defense credit, Payne. I mean, they had a chance to get blown out early in that game against the Tennessee Titans. Thought it was going to be more of the same from Zach Wilson in the offense, but the defense held them at bay. A game that easily could have been 17-0 is 9-0. The Jets are able to get a touchdown, ultimately get their first lead of the season. And then when they had a chance to wilt in the fourth quarter, to their credit, defensively they stood up to the task, and we saw Zach Wilson finally show flashes why he was drafted in the top 3 picks against the defense that was much more manageable than a top 5 unit.
That was the biggest thing. Defense kept him in the game early. They were able to get pressure on Ryan Tannehill. I thought Robert Salah called a very good game. How many times did they sack Ryan Tannehill yesterday? Felt like he was running for his life.
Yeah, I think he was sacked about 17 times or so it felt watching that game in real time.
He was running for his life early. They sold out to obviously stop the run, and you can do that when you don't have A.J. Brown or Julio Jones out there, and I thought that was part of the reason why, obviously, the game got steamed is matchups. Right now, you can dedicate that extra man to the box and slow down Derrick Henry. And it was already a run defense that was 13th in rush efficiency. So that was their strength. So if you can use that strength and sell out to stop the run a little bit more, knowing that A.J. Brown and Julio Jones aren't beating you over the top, it provides a nice luxury for Robert Saleh to crowd the box, send more blitzes, and they got after Ryan Tannehill, and they kept that team in the game early. And then we saw Zach Wilson start to mature a little bit, start to execute on offense, and this is a defense without Bud Dupree and the Titans where you see Zach kind of fighting in his own weight class. And I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback. I just have no clue in that situation. But this was a downgrade in class. This wasn't Bill Belichick in his great scheme, right? We saw him stifle and confuse Tom Brady, one of the best quarterback ever. And we know his track history with rookie quarterbacks. Vic Fangio, a great defensive mind. And then you had the Panthers, who certainly weren't tested, but number one in rushing efficiency defense, number one in passing efficiency defense, number one in pass rush win rate. That's who Zach Wilson faced the first 3 starts of the season. You probably couldn't handpick 3 worst defenses for a rookie quarterback to face, all without his left tackle, Mekhi Becton. And so this was a step down in class, and it was good to see him gain some confidence early.
Do we give Lamar Jackson credit, Payne? Because for the first time maybe in his short-lived NFL career to date, the Ravens go on the road and beat a very good defense using the passing game as the spark, as the running game was largely bottled up for stretches.
Oversimplifying things here, but there is 2 keys to measuring offense, right? Your down-to-down efficiency and then your ability to be explosive and sudden. And that was a game where defense obviously led the way, but Baltimore's explosiveness won it for them. Baltimore was able to jump out to a lead in the first half because of 4 explosive passes from Lamar. Denver had 0. Lamar wasn't overly efficient. Completion percentage 2% below expectation. We knew he missed Wednesday and Thursday's practice with a back injury. Videos surfaced of him practicing lately on Friday, and he didn't look close to 100%. So he only had 6 carries for 21 yards. Tyson Williams was a healthy scratch, so we got all of the ancient running backs involved in that game. It was a nice little ancient running back party just going on there in Baltimore. No clue what they're doing. I mean, they're an analytics-driven franchise too, so it's just maddening to see that. You kind of just cast away a young kid for guys that were on the scrap heap a couple weeks ago. Anyways, we had heard in the offseason that Lamar had improved his deep passing. And so far, that looks to be the case. And you're going to have some weapons coming back too, and Rashad Bateman and Miles Boykin. And so hopefully Lamar continues to improve that part of his game, maybe show a little bit more down-to-down efficiency passing, but 5 explosive throws. 9.6 completed air yards in that game. And then the defense handled the rest. Denver had a 29% passing success rate. Didn't matter if it was Bridgewater or Locke. 3.5 yards per pass attempt for Denver. So Lamar got the team out with some explosives, built that lead, and it was too much to overcome, and the defense really showed out here. And so really, really game effort from Baltimore. That was an interesting line movement throughout the week. Not that it was like massive movements because it was just a back and forth toggle between the 0. But you had some of the numbers guys take Baltimore plus 1.5 early in the week, and then they moved to the 1-point favorite. And then I think when the Lamar video surfaced on Friday of the injury, we kind of saw Denver move back to a 1-point favorite. So it was an interesting little battle there on that game.
Yeah, and a fascinating one to watch. I mean, Denver gets out with the touchdown to start the second quarter, and you think, okay, the Broncos have kind of weathered the storm. They stepped up in class, but that was the lone highlight for them offensively for the bulk of that game as Baltimore goes on the road with a commanding victory. With the sweet comes the sour, of course, Payne, so with the good comes the bad. And I don't want to kick a team while it's already down, but the Detroit Lions, for everything positive that we said about their effort against the Baltimore Ravens last week, where they were tough luck losers on that 66-yard field goal from Justin Tucker, the Lions reminded us why they were the Lions. And I know one of our most loyal listeners won't be happy to hear this in the wake of his Fighting Irish going down on Saturday and then watching the Lions on Sunday. Dan Campbell, down 10, elects to go on 4th and 1 instead of making it a 1-score game with about 3.5, 4 minutes to go. The Lions have one drive that comes up short on downs at the Bears 8. I think that was the one. They have one drive where they fumble on the Bears 3 where Jared Goff wasn't ready to go under center. And they have another drive short on down at the Bears 5. Somewhere along the way, if you want to be a bad team and not a miserable franchise, you have to convert those things. But man, tough to watch if you were a Lions fan yesterday against Chicago.
Great to watch if you had bet the under.
That's a very good point.
Probably wasn't a deserving win had you bet the under, but some fortunes came through there in the first half. That's just kind of the Lions. You feel bad for them. This was a game you knew they thought they had a chance to win, and then you have those early turnovers when you're driving the ball down the field. What's interesting about that game, though, is all week we saw it slowly trickling down. You kind of gauge the sense of the room. And I'll be candid, guys that I had not spoke to in months texting me, Lions are going to win this week. Lions are going to win this week. I was on a phone call, unrelated, we'll call it the card space. A buddy's talking to me about something, and then just out of the blue, and he's a small player, $50, $100 player, said, boy, what do you make of the Lions this week? I know you don't talk to outside people about games. I said, no, you're right. He's like, but I really like the Lions. And I just said, stay away. This was like the marble game of the world. Like everyone thought the Lions were just going to come out here because no one wanted Chicago. Who wanted Chicago after that performance of 47 yards in Cleveland? Nobody wanted it. And I'll be candid, I couldn't quite get myself there and should have once 2.5 popped. But Todd, you and I went a little contrarian on some of our contests, and we included Chicago at a bad number on the contest at laying the 3, just because it was that contrarian, and we liked it that much that we thought this was a spot where Chicago would show up. And so it doesn't stun me there, but I think, whether you bet the under or whether you bet Chicago, there were certainly some early fortunes there on the Lions turnovers.
It's actually the second time we've gone contrarian and used the Bears as a contest entry through the first 4 weeks. Both home games took a good number against the Bengals at -2.5 and then decided to come back and lay the 3 here. Although if Dan Campbell does convert that and get the touchdown, would not have been thrilled with a push when they don't employ optimal strategy by any stretch of the imagination. What else stuck out to you, Payne, in the negative form for what you saw transpire?
I think you have to go out to San Francisco. Seattle gets the win and cover. It was not pretty by any stretch. We broke this game down and we said, boy, this thing has a ton of variance. I'm not really sure how to slice and dice this thing because Seattle had come out like a house on fire early in these games, and they were one of the most efficient offenses in the first half, second in success rate, first in explosiveness, and then whether it's complete randomness, whether it's Shane Waldron's inability to adapt, or it's the defense not being able to get off the field and getting it back into Russ's hands. Seattle had the lowest time of possession coming into this game. We didn't know what the hell was going on. But this really was bad from Seattle across the board. Now, I know they scored their first points of the entire season in the third quarter, 14 of them, and that changed some things. But you look in totality, 39% success rate on offense for Seattle. 4.3 yards per play. Less than 300 yards of offense. It was not what we expected to see from Seattle and what was really a must-win game. And so when you look at the board early this morning on Monday, no surprise the Rams are getting steamed first thing. Now out to a 2-point favorite because Seattle, there's something wrong there. And what did we mention? We said something to the effect of, I can't quite remember, but how the defense was inexplicably unprepared in certain situations where it looked like they were unorganized, didn't quite know what to do, which is odd for a defense being run by Ken Norton, who had been in Seattle for 9 years over 2 stints, and somehow another broken play in the secondary. Trey Lance hits the bomb to Debo, I believe, down the sideline, but I mean, a freshman quarterback at the local high school could have made that throw. I mean, no one was within 25 yards of Debo Samuel. So another broken coverage defensively as well.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head talking about Seattle and that being a semi-fraudulent victory. I mean, they were anemic offensively, and it was just the 49ers' inability to put them away and land a kill shot early in that game that kept Seattle hanging around. They were able to take the game into the break at 7-7. And I think what was more indicative than anything else, Payne, that halftime number opened with San Francisco a $1.25 favorite on the money line. That number steamed out to minus $1.55, minus $1.60. I saw 1.5s turn to 3s. And I think, watching that game, you go, okay, I can understand why there's this kind of support for San Francisco. Then, of course, there's the injury, there's the short field. Seattle finishes the game with less than 250 yards of offense, yet looks like they were an offensive juggernaut, especially on the scoreboard. When I look at the Browns-Vikings game, Payne, I'm not sure if I should be giving credit to both defenses and how well they performed, or if I should be taking shots at two offenses that struggled mightily. Baker, 15-33 in the game. Browns go for 4.4 yards per play. The Vikings pick up 75 yards on the opening drive. Think, hey, look, they've got a great game plan. Unfortunately, that for them, that was about 30% of their total offensive output for the afternoon.
We didn't break this game down, and it was one that we probably should have. We saw the under get steamed here, and sometimes there are elements where your numbers simply don't matter. There's matchups in these games that just have so much importance and value, and I think that's what we saw here. Obviously, Baker Mayfield did not play well. Missed the kind of hammer late in the game to OBJ that would have sealed the deal. But you had two offenses that are identical. Stefanski was in Minnesota last year. Minnesota runs the same offense that Cleveland runs virtually, right? There's obviously little intricate changes and details that aren't the same, but they run the same offenses. And so both defenses saw this every day at practice for the last how many ever years. And so there was no surprises. And we called for the Browns defense to be much improved, and it is. And so you have to factor that in a little bit. There is a clear advantage along their defensive line and a Vikings pass block unit that has some question marks. On the flip side, you had a Browns offensive line that's playing a little bit beat up. And right now, the last 6 quarters of football for Mike Zimmer's defense looks like it's really rounding into shape. So something to factor moving forward as well.
Yeah, I do think the Vikings, despite their 1-3 record through the first 4 games, will be just fine. They get a much more manageable opponent this weekend in the Detroit Lions. But you have to imagine if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, or in our case, someone holding a win total ticket over the number, we'd much rather be 3-1 or even 4-0 with a little luck. But I don't think that the Vikings are completely out of it by any stretch of the imagination. Payne, as far as the ugly was concerned, I debated taking shots at the Rams, but figured, I wouldn't bother there. I mean, Davis Mills and the Texans, do we even want to go in that particular direction for what they weren't able to do against Buffalo?
The Rams are worth kind of addressing and doing it quickly. We'll obviously break this game down Thursday, but you're seeing Raheem Morris attempt to execute a defense that isn't his. And so he's not able to make the necessary adjustments based upon how this defense should be played. And Arizona's offense was just dominant yesterday, but they did crush him on the ground. Obviously, game script impacted that a little bit, but as good as Kyler was through the air, this idea of just completely saying, hey, we just want to defend your pass because everyone wants to pass the ball this day and age, you still have to be able to stop the run to a certain extent and not allow the opponent to dictate game flow throughout. And ultimately, that's what the Cardinals were able to do with the Rams not being able to stop the run. You mentioned Davis Mills. It's low-hanging fruit. And I'll be honest with you. This was a game where I was contemplating taking the Texans. And then I saw the move from 15.5 out to 19 at Pinnacle. And I'm like, okay. I'm going to stay off this one. I'm going to respect the move. And then in my head, I say to myself, there's weather in Buffalo. And I have a kid who played in the West Coast at Stanford. This probably isn't going to go very well. And so that's ultimately what saved me in this game. And I know a lot of people will just kind of scoff and be like, it was the Texans. Buffalo is supposed to win this game. But just because you play bad teams, the way you play them and your ability to dominate them does have predictive qualities. And so you see a spread that closes a consensus 17.5, but the sharpest shot was dealing 19. Win by 40 and pitch a shutout. And the Texans had 3 extra days of rest and prep, and your Super Bowl is the following week against Kansas City. I thought it was very impressive. You hold an NFL offense, regardless if it's the Texans, at 2.6 yards per play and a 29% success rate. That's impressive to me, exceeding expectations by 3+ touchdowns there. So I think you have to give Buffalo more credit than maybe shitting on the Texans here. It looks like Brian Daboll's offense is starting to hum a little bit, and McDermott's defense is getting back to that top 5 level we thought they could.
That is very fair, and as you mentioned, we'll see Buffalo under the bright lights in Kansas City on Sunday Night Football, a game every football fan should be looking forward to, with the 2 front runners in the AFC doing battle. The Bills against the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, Payne, from the good, the bad, and the ugly, we move to look ahead lines, but it's also the perfect time to remind people to follow you on Twitter at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Furman. You, of course, can follow me there as well. Most importantly, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. We appreciate all of you, our loyal listeners. The engagement this season has been outstanding. Go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so. 5-star reviews. Love the feedback we're getting on the Bet the Board YouTube channel, as well as that show continues to grow in popularity as we're providing you content of the video and audio variety 4 days a week. Also, plenty of great written articles. Did get a note, Payne, from one of our loyal listeners, one of my close friends, who goes, "Man, I didn't even know you guys were doing written articles." So I want to give Drew Borland of Sports Source Analytics a shout out, providing some great college football content, in addition to our house writer, Watt05, who provides all sorts of market analysis each and every week. Just want to give our listeners and those folks looking to get a little bit smarter in terms of the betting markets, all sorts of different tools. Look ahead lines, Payne. Titans, 3.5-point favorites for a trip to North Florida to take on the Jaguars. It's good to see that Urban Meyer will get himself out of the bar and back onto the sidelines for this one. Look ahead number for this.
I gotta tell you, I saw her. I'd be in the bar too.
I think
good for him.
I think when you're a higher profile head coach, sometimes you have to be a little bit more discreet, but that's a different discussion for a different day. I won't claim to know.
Absolutely. You can't go with the bright salmon pullover. You got to be a little bit more discreet with your tones and colors, so you just don't stand out like a sore thumb.
Especially when you go back into the heart of Buckeye country. I'm sure if he was somewhere in Laramie, Wyoming, people wouldn't have gone, "Hey, look, it's the old ball coach there in Urban Meyer." But the Titans were a 7.5-point favorite in this game. Of course, Jacksonville acquitted themselves quite nicely on Thursday night, coming up just short against the Bengals. But as we talked about with the Titans, plenty of injuries, and we're not quite sure who will be back in the fold for Sunday's kickoff.
That's why we've seen some movement, right? Part of this is the unknowns. What's the status of A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Bud Dupree? Part of this is the Jaguars performing better than expectation Thursday night in front of a national audience. And while this is substantially shorter than the look ahead, this number is certainly closer to my number at the current price. And so ultimately you have a hungry Jags team. Urban Meyer did give a passion speech post-game about loving the guys and playing hard, and they probably should have won that game and would have won that game had they executed and scored the touchdown going into half, because then it's 21-0. The game's over. Cincinnati's dead and buried. But you provided some element of, like, hey, we're still in this game, and it's Cincinnati that goes into the locker room charged. They get the ball out of the half, score a touchdown, and all of a sudden it's game on. So this number at 3.5 certainly closer to what we made it than the 7.5, but you do want to kind of keep an eye on some of those injuries. And if you have a situation where A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Bud Dupree are all in, then this becomes a little bit more of a daunting task for Jacksonville.
Well, and you mentioned injuries, and that's part of what's impacting this particular number, along with very different results yesterday. The Arizona Cardinals were a 1.5-point favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook on the look-ahead number. We've seen that price balloon out to the Cardinals minus 4.5 as they'll welcome in the San Francisco 49ers for a pivotal divisional matchup. No speculation required. We know Jimmy Garoppolo is going to miss some time, so the Trey Lance experience will begin on Sunday with him getting his first ever NFL start.
Substantial move here through the 3 and the 4 counts. Obviously, as you alluded to, opposite results play a part. massive line movement. Arizona wins by double digits as a road underdog. San Francisco loses by a touchdown as a home favorite. The Trey Lance factor is huge. All signs point to him being the starter after Jimmy G said in his post-game presser that he'll have an MRI today and should only miss a few games. So you have to factor in a downgrade there. I'm not sure what Trey Lance is. Super talented. Thrown into the fire here against Seattle. You'll see the 2 touchdowns. You'll see his ability and efficiency running. But you also have to factor in that Seattle was up multiple scores. They went to a little bit of a prevent defense. They didn't prepare for a quarterback that was as mobile as Trey Lance. Obviously, they prepared for Jimmy G a little bit. And so some of the throws that he was making almost got like 9 guys killed. And we'll see if the accuracy is there. We'll see if you can game plan, if a defense games plan for him, what it looks like, especially a defense that deals with the mobile quarterback at practice every day. So that'll be the interesting element here. That's all I have to say in this game. It doesn't shock me that we've seen this line move. Ultimately, it'll come down to if professional bettors can kind of plug their nose and be a little bit higher on Trey Lance, because certainly I think there's some value potentially as this creeps up on the 49ers.
Watching Trey Lance yesterday come in relief for Jimmy Garoppolo, all I could think of was Rick Vaughn in the movie Major League. Throw him the heater. There was no touch. There was no finesse. And it didn't matter if a receiver was 3 yards away or if he was 30 yards away. You were getting the 101 mile an hour two-seamer right at you, and you better catch the damn thing. Otherwise, it was going to go right through your sternum.
I didn't know why Kittle was still in the game late. Down 14. There was like a minute 20 to go. And he throws a ball over the middle. It was like the one duck he threw. And it was a wobbler. And Kittle just gets crunched between 2 defenders. And then the following play, Debo runs like a 7-yard in. And it's incomplete. Thank God Trey Lance threw it 15 yards over Debo's head, because Debo is about to get sandwiched between a safety and a linebacker. And you see Debo look back to the line of scrimmage like, what are you doing? And so that'll be interesting to see. Kyle Shanahan's brilliant. Like, the guy's an offensive genius. So he's going to craft some things here for Trey Lance that no one's seen yet. And that's partly the intrigue, I think, with San Francisco, is if Trey Lance doesn't turn it over and he's a little bit more accurate, and he has an entire week to build his confidence, getting all the reps, which is huge, then you may have something here.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, of course, Arizona sees a different version of Trey Lance every day in practice as well. Kyler Murray and his mobility, a little bit different, tackling in space, something you don't get to do necessarily in practice. And one other game, Payne, that I wanted to touch on, we saw the Chiefs 3.5-point favorites on a look-ahead number for that Sunday night showdown against the Buffalo Bills. This number reopened at FanDuel Sportsbook, Chiefs -3, and we're even seeing some 2.5s, albeit juiced, out there in the market. So potentially an early move through a key number as we try and figure out exactly how these 2 AFC heavyweights are perceived in the market.
I'll be quick since we'll break this down in detail. The line opening 3 indicated that Buffalo would be the side. So it's not shocking to see them take money early Monday morning. Now at 2.5, it becomes a little bit different of a handicap. Buffalo, this is their Super Bowl. And the things they've done with their roster were predicated and geared towards beating one team, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. So we will see if their natural pass rusher, or pass rushing rather, can get home here. And if it can, then it makes this game a little bit more of a difficult task for Kansas City. And let's see if Josh Gordon's in a game like this. I kind of banged the table for Kansas City to go get a physical receiver on the opposite side of Tyreek. They went and did it. I'm not sure Josh Gordon would have been my choice. I was kind of leaning towards a trade with Preston Williams, but ultimately Brett Veach went and got a physical receiver on the other side. Let's see if he's ready for Buffalo.
Sunday Night Football, marquee matchup. We'll have to wait 6+ days for that one. What we don't have to wait for is Monday Night Football, Payne, and it's a showdown with some of the Chiefs' most bitter rivals in the AFC West. The Chargers will welcome in the Las Vegas Raiders. You're looking at the Chargers, a field goal favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook. Total in this game, 51.5. The Raiders, they've won 3 out of the last 4 against the Chargers, 4 out of 6. When you look at the Raiders, they've been outstanding on the road, going 8-3 straight up, the last 11 on the highway. They've won 6 of their last 7. We know about the Chargers' struggles in their own building, 11-21-1 against the spread at home since moving to Los Angeles. The Raiders have won the last 4 Monday Night Football games, all outright as underdogs, including Week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. And the other thing that I think listeners will find fascinating that I know you and I have already know comes to be fact. This is not going to feel like a Chargers home game by any stretch of the imagination. And Derek Carr didn't exactly mince words, pretty much saying you always looked at it as another home game, and that's no disrespect. It's just a fact. Raiders, field goal underdogs in the division against a Chargers team fresh off the upset of the Kansas City Chiefs.
And let's start there with Derek Carr and John Gruden, who are both killing it right now. John Gruden is doing what he's best at. And it's no surprise. This is something we've said for years. We said it the moment he was hired. It's like, lock John Gruden in his office. Only let him look at film, prepare a game plan, organize a script, and call plays. Don't let him touch the roster. Don't let him have input in the draft. Just let him do his thing. And so far, against defenses of Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Miami, the Raiders' offense 9th in passing efficiency. The O-line's been downgraded. There's really only one huge threat in Darren Waller. So you have John Gruden really manufacturing this offense, and you're getting Derek Carr playing the best ball of his life. And that's really what's transpiring here for this team. Derek Carr's pushing the ball down the field, which is exactly what John Gruden wanted. 25% of Derek Carr's throws have been 15-plus yards this season. So they are threatening defenses down the field. But this is a big test, right, against Brandon Staley. And his defense worries about defending the pass first, defending the pass second, and defending the pass last. And there's really no other thought. And that's where I think this game gets a little bit interesting, is the Chargers want you to run it. They dare you to run it. They let you run it. And the Raiders can't really run. So this is really good on good here, with the Raiders trying to move it through the air against the best part of the Chargers defense. But it might not actually come down to like who can win that battle of what both teams do best, but what both teams do worst. And so that's the intriguing part for me, because Gruden does want to run it, right? He's got this old school mentality to him, and you would have thought when he signed Peyton Barber that it was Barry Sanders in his prime. And so it's really interesting, because you just look at the Raiders right now, 30th in rushing efficiency, 31st in run block win rate, dead last in PFF's run block grade. The Chargers 31st in defensive rush efficiency. You have Justin Jones on the interior out. Kenneth Murray injured his ankle in Saturday's practice. He's out, so 2 guys out in Brandon Staley's front 7. But Gruden's so old school that he actually still runs more on first down this season than he passes. And that is actually the one down where the Raiders have been decent running, 15th in rushing success rate on first down. So keep an eye on that down. If the Raiders are able to run on first down and they're picking up 4 or 5 yards a pop, that may give the Raiders an edge when they actually do pass. We'll see if their offensive line can hold up in protection. Bottom 3rd in the league in pass block win rate for the Raiders. The Chargers are top 10 in pass rush win rate. And you're going to have this one-on-one matchup where Joey Bosa is lined up against Alex Leatherwood, the rookie. And Leatherwood's allowed 4th most pressures among tackles. He's currently 6th worst in pass blocking efficiency. So the Raiders are going to have to chip. They're going to have to send help that way, or Bosa's just going to wreck this game, Todd.
So where Alex Ingold has to earn his paychecks, keep the fullback out there for a little bit of additional pass protection. And you're right. I mean, you mentioned the fact that the Raiders don't wow you by anything they do when it comes to establishing the ground game. They're going to have to find some modicum of success. When you look at the Chargers from an efficiency standpoint, yards per game, yards per carry, nothing they do there will leave you brimming with confidence. On the other side of the ball, Payne, when you try and identify some familiarity, strengths, and weaknesses, we all know what Justin Herbert is capable of doing and what he has done against the Raiders. In 2 starts last year, averaged 320 yards per game, had 4 total touchdowns, 7 completions of 20-plus yards, and accumulated a passer rating of 113-plus. You look at what Herbert has done so far this season, 3rd in completion percentage and 8th in yards per attempt against the zone, the defensive scheme that Gus Bradley has made famous and popular in the past. But the one strength of this Raiders defense has actually been their ability to get some pressure with a defensive line where there are a ton of bodies that they'll cycle in through. Max Crosby among the league leaders in 40 quarterback hits. He should be matched up against Storm Norton, who has looked more like a turnstile in relief of Brian Bulaga than anything else. But this Chargers offensive line is still going to be a bigger challenge than what the Raiders have encountered so far. Maybe the matchup to watch on that Raiders defensive line versus the Chargers offensive front will be Yannick Ngakoue against talented Northwestern rookie Rashawn Slater.
This is really one of the most fascinating matchups, I think, of the entire week. And that's what I'm going to try to get out of tonight's game, is seeing which one of these units is for real. Because my feeling coming in is that the Chargers offense has massive upside, but they're not playing nearly as well as what people think because Justin Herbert's just kind of enamoring people. And that I think there's probably only one direction to go for the Raiders defense, and that's down. But right now, it's just difficult to kind of parse through this because the perception is the Chargers offense, and you have, Herbert, as I alluded to, and Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen, and now Mike Williams looks like a real weapon, is that the Chargers offense is like flat out humming. It's not. Like, reality is, like, it's not a great offense right now. On 1st and 2nd down in the first 3 quarters, the Chargers are 19th in total success rate. Joe Lombardi and Justin Herbert are operating the 25th most efficient first down offense. And that's coming against the Cowboys, Chiefs, and Washington defenses that have an average efficiency rank of 25. So this offense is not what everyone currently thinks it is. Justin Herbert's just playing, a miracle worker role here. 3rd and 4th down is where he is just killing it. It's where he's allowing the offense to sustain drives. I mean, that is where this offense is really flat out surviving. 57% success rate on 3rd and 4th downs combined. But early downs are what's far more predictable than 3rd down. If I wasn't enamored with the names, we would be calling for offensive regression for the Chargers. The only reason I'm not is the talent, right? It's because I want to kind of be ahead of this surge that I anticipate coming at some point this season. I'm trying to kind of not be biased and be impartial and understand that this is a brand new offense. It's a really complex offense. There were 0 preseason games played. More is being added to Herbert's plate, and everyone's kind of learning on the fly. And so that's why I don't really want to be behind the curve on what this offense can potentially be. The defense they faced tonight with the Raiders, it's improved, but by how much, right? Like, you faced Big Ben, you got Jacoby Brissett. Neither of those guys are Justin Herbert. Obviously, Baltimore's a run-first offense, and their focus was Kansas City in Week 2. This is the real first test for the Raiders' pass defense. Now, the defensive coordinator and the names on the Raiders' defense are better than last year. There's been this really nice infusion of new guys and then young guys also improving. Quentin Jefferson and Ngakoue, who you mentioned, Todd, are great additions to the front 4. Perriman and KJ Wright, if they can stay healthy, they provide a nice veteran presence. Trayvon Mullen has really improved. You get the solid pick with the other Trayvon from TCU at safety. Casey Hayward was the no-risk, high-reward signing at a premium position we outlined specifically in the offseason, and that move's paid off in spades. It's like, when you think about Casey Hayward, it's like the scene from Moneyball that we talk about all the time, Todd. It's Billy Beane talking to David Justice. You want to stay in the league and earn another contract? And I want to milk the last good football you have left in you. And that's what's going on here with Casey Hayward. But again, the schedule of passing offenses to date that the Raiders have faced, just 24th in efficiency. The Raiders have also faced one of the very easiest schedules of pass blocking offensive lines. You got Miami and Pittsburgh, who are 28th and 27th in pass block win rate. The Ravens' O-line was beaten and battered coming into the season, still is. And so that combination has really allowed the Raiders to do one thing defensively, and that is get pressure without blitzing. Raiders are 9th in pressure rate despite blitzing just 10% of the time, second least in the league. And that combination allows you to dedicate more guys in the secondary and more guys in coverage. And so let's see if that's something that can sustain. It doesn't feel like it can, but we'll see. You also have some narrative, which you hinted at the top. Gus Bradley, Casey Hayward against their old team. Some added motivation there. I'll be candid. What I have seen so far in this game is one group fired the Chargers -3 early in the week. They've been extremely high in the Chargers. I think they've bet the Chargers every single week this season. And then you had the number grabbers saying, I have to take 3.5 in a game where there isn't a home field advantage, and 75 to 80% of the crowd are going to be Raiders fans, so there's absolutely no home field advantage. And so there's a battle going on with two groups on the side. Under 52.5 was very sharp. I've also seen Justin Herbert's rushing prop come in over 14.5 rush yards. That's what I've seen and been given. Don't personally have a penny on this game as of 7 a.m. Vegas time. Still going to dig into it once we get off the podcast, but I don't have a penny on this game, but that's what I have seen and heard in terms of what's sharp and who's on what in this game so far.
I think it'll be a tremendous watch. I mean, we talk about all of these, watershed moments early in a football season, trying to figure out which teams are for real, which teams are a bit fraudulent. And I think people had high expectations for the Chargers coming into the season, knowing that Justin Herbert and new offense with all the weapons was just starting to scratch the surface. And you mentioned Mike Williams. I mean, he's been an absolute revelation opposite Keenan Allen. And it's really given this offense a much more dynamic playmaker in terms of what Williams is doing, not just as a legitimate deep threat, but as a high volume receiver. I mean, he's had 2 games this year where he's got 7 or more catches. He did that once in his entire career coming into the season. Meanwhile, the Raiders, not much was expected of this team before the season. I mean, their win total 7.5. They have a chance to start off 4-0 and suddenly become very relevant behind a new look defense and an offense that's brimming with confidence, even without their lead back in Josh Jacobs. So a fascinating football game for a variety of reasons, and that's the perfect way that people can try and take advantage. I mean, if you don't find an angle that you like before kickoff, FanDuel has you covered with all sorts of live options, in-game, halftimes, you name it. FanDuel.com/bet-the-board. Go there, sign up, and take full advantage. Payne, we've covered a lot of the NFL landscape here on this Monday morning. Any final nuggets or tidbits before we cast the NFL aside and focus on college football before we reconvene on Thursday?
Yes. Going back to the podcast itself and our loyal listeners, go to YouTube, subscribe as soon as you hear this. Tonight, this evening, as the game is kicking off, we will announce the 5 winners of the $1,000 giveaway. 5 winners, $200 each, $1,000 giveaway to YouTube. You're automatically entered if you subscribe. So if you're listening to this, as soon as it comes out, you'll have 8+ hours to subscribe and get in there. The second thing we're doing, Todd said go to iTunes, which I believe is now called Apple Podcasts.
Same thing.
Rate and review the podcast.
Same damn thing. They know what I meant.
Go to Apple Podcasts. If you leave a 5-star review, you will automatically be entered into our next giveaway. 3 people will be selected at random. We'll throw it in an automator. $100 each to 3 people. You have to make it a 5-star review and leave a nice little comment so we see it and we can actually have our producer throw it in an automator. And we will run that next Monday. We'll announce the winner. So go to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review, nice little comment, automatically entered. 3 people, chance at $100 each. So that's it. I think this is the thing that we enjoy doing the most because we know we're not here without our listeners. We would rather give money away to our listeners as a marketing approach, right? Rather than spending it on other forms of marketing. And so anytime we can give away to you guys, you are the reason we're here. We try to do that. That's it. Over and out. Let's get out of Dodge.
No, it's the biggest thing. Let me add to that real quick. I mean, it's a grassroots marketing campaign. It's allowed us to do a number of things different from other sports betting podcasts that are out there. We've grown organically, mainly because, like Payne said, it's all about listener support, the interaction, the retweets, you guys sharing it with your friends and families. Hopefully, we continue to make you smarter each and every week, both on the pro football and college football side. And anything you guys would like to see us do, always feel free to offer feedback. But one thing, don't tell us you want picks on all 16 NFL games, because that's never been our brand. That never will be our brand. It's all about allowing you guys the tools to make more informed decisions when you head to the window each and every weekend during the football season. Follow Payne on Twitter at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Furman. You can follow me there. Again, most importantly, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. Best of luck with all of your wagers on Monday Night Football between the Raiders and Chargers, and we'll see you at the window.